It's live, sir.
Yes. Okay. So you can go back to Shama and ask her to continue the presentation.
Okay.
Okay. And to prevent echo, mute your YouTube and this one also. Keep it in mute. Either watch it on Zoom or YouTube. Only one. If you are watching them simultaneously, you have to keep one of them in mute. So better do you keep the.
Okay. So I'm stopping the share here, sir. So, sir, it's showing live, no? And you have checked it on your face, on your account. Is it showing
Stop sharing. Yes.
Should we start? Are we good to go, Shama?
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready.
Okay. And sir, it's live, right? On that account, I have not seen on your this thing if it is showing live on online nutrition training.
It's live, Danya.
It's live. Okay.
It's going live, Danya.
Okay. So we can start, right?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Hello and welcome everyone. Good evening. My name is Dania Irfan, and today we have dietitian Shama Ismail with us. Shama is she is a postgraduate diploma holder from Dehradun, and currently she is practicing in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh. Shama, welcome, and it's the screen is all yours. Go ahead, please.
Thank you for your warm welcomes. Hi, hello everyone. Good evening. Myself, dietitian Shama Satarkar from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I would like to thank Dr. Suresh sir and Padma ma'am for giving me this wonderful opportunities. Before moving the presentation, I want to confirm is I'm audible? Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, Shama.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's begin. Today's presentation is on an overview of carbohydrate metabolisms. So moving toward the carbohydrate metabolisms, we some basic nutrition. What is nutrition? Which define as a science how the body utilize food to meet the requirements of for development, growth, and repair and maintenance. We all know there is the 6 types of nutrition: carbs, proteins, fats, minerals, vitamins, and water. In from that, carbohydrate is a major roles of in nutrients for good health. So here is the overview of carbohydrate metabolism. This is the overview. We will discuss the further slides. Carbohydrates. What is the carbohydrate and how we will see what is the carbohydrate. Carbohydrates is the organic compounds combining carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen molecules. It is a major macronutrients present in a person diet, which is based in a primary energy source of body. And also it is an energy needed to move up and perform works and live in consumed in the form of carbohydrates. And it is a simplest form of general formula is CnH2nOn. Photosynthesis. Moving toward the photosynthesis, as we all know, the process of the photosynthesis we learn in our childhood life. So I'm throwing some light on this photosynthesis. How the carbohydrate manufactured and stored by the plants through the process of photosynthesis. During photosynthesis, green plants utilize energy from the sunlight to convert carbon dioxide, water, and certain minerals into the glucose and oxygens. Plant produce and store carbs in greens, that is vegetables, green leafy vegetables, grains and fruits. Human beings and animals consume these green plants and breathe the oxygens for their own energy bits and release the carbon dioxide and water. Thus, they store the eco-balance in the biosphere. This is the process of the photosynthesis as I explained. Moving toward the classification of the carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, which is also known as sugar, that is saccharides. And saccharides are the three types. Monosaccharides, which is one sugar molecules. Mono means singles, which is saccharide is sugar, so one sugar molecules. So monosaccharides consists of the carbon chains with a hydroxyl group attached to all carbon except one, which is double bond to an oxygen. These carbonyl groups can be in any positions, long change forming either of ketones or some monosaccharides share the same molecular formula but are different structures due to the different positions of atoms. So monosaccharides formula is C6H2O6. These seemingly small structures details results in the completely different sugars with different properties and metabolism pathway. Monosaccharides exits in open chain form and as well as in the closed ring form. The ring forms can connect to each other to create the dimers, oligomers and polymers, producing disaccharides and oligosaccharides and polysaccharides respectively. So this is the example of the monosaccharides, glucose, fructose and galactose. Moving toward the disaccharides, it has two sugar molecules. There is example of sucrose, maltose and lactose. Polysaccharides. Polysaccharide is a common polysaccharides includes starch, dextrins, glycogens and fibers. So their difference arise from the bonds between monomers. Glycogens and starch serves as the energy storage in animals and plant respectively. Their monomers are bonded by alpha linkage. Some monomers can make more than one connections producing branch. Starch in foods can be digested by the breaking these bonds with the enzymes amylase. This is the monosaccharides, which means one sugar molecules. There are the three examples: glucose, fructose and galactose, as we know. So glucose is abundant in the fruit and sweet corns, corn syrups, honey and certain fruits. It is the principal products formed by hydrolysis of more complex carbohydrates in digestion and form of sugar normally found in bloodstreams, and it is oxidized in the cell as source of energy, as I said, and store in the liver and muscles in the form of glycogens. Under normal condition, central nerve systems can use only glucose as a major fuel source. Fructose, which is also known as levulose, which are found in fruit sugar, which is found together with glucose and sucrose in honey and fruit. For example, soft drinks are now almost completely sweetened with high fructose corn syrups rather than sucrose. And galactose, which is not found free in nature, it is free in nature, but produced from milk sugar, means lactose, milk sugar, by hydrolysis in the digestive process. Disaccharides, each of the three common disaccharides consists two monosaccharides molecules, at least one, which is glucose. Sucrose, it has a glucose, and fructose, it is ordinary table sugars found in the sugar cane, sugar beets, molasses, maple sugars, corn syrups and maple sugars, as well as in fruits, vegetables and honey. When hydrolyzed by digestive systems or boiled with acids, sucrose is converted to the mixture of equal part of glucose and fructose. Maltose, which is also known as malt sugar, and it is not ordinary occur free in nature. It's composed two molecules, glucose, and is formed by enzyme digesting large molecules. This maltose can be fragmented to forms a glucose molecule and it is easy to absorptions. For examples, we take cereals, grain sprout is enzymes convert the grain starch into the maltose. Lactose, it is also called milk sugar, which is found in milk and it does not occur in plants. It's limited, almost exclusive to the mammary gland. Malt sugar. Malt sugar, it is not ordinary. Lactating animals upon hydrolysis is yields glucose and lactose. It plays an important role in the absorptions of calcium, phosphorus from intestines by the process of lactic acids of fermentations. Moving toward the polysaccharides, it is not a sugar but it is known as a complex carbohydrates. Starch, dextrins, glycogens. So starch found only in plants. The starch molecule consists two components, that is amylose, which is straight change of glucose units, and amylopectin, which is the branches of glucose units. The amylose and amylopectin contain different foods, govern the gelling abilities and digestibility of different foods. For example, if we take the food that contain a higher amylopectins have the better digestible, and thus they raise the blood sugars level more as compared to food which have a higher amylose content. Dextrin is an intermittent product which occur during the hydrolysis of the starch dextrins. It is a part of a typical brown color and flavor of food. Example with toasting of bread. It is usually formed up by the actions of the enzyme acids and dry heats with a decrease in size of the saccharized molecules, their solubility and sweetness increase. It make them easiest to digest. So glycogens, it is a storage forms of the carbohydrate in the body, most readily available source of the glucose and energy of the body. About 340 grams of glycogen is stored in the liver and muscles. So moving toward the fibers, we all know cellulose is the major structural components of the plants consist of unbranched chain of glucose bonded by the beta linkage for which human lack the enzyme to digest. Cellulose and other digestible carbohydrates in food do not supply energy but are an important parts of the human diet known as dietary fibers. And dietary fibers is also included the plant material which cannot be digested and absorbed in the body. That has two types of fibers, soluble fibers and insoluble fibers. Moving towards the digestions of the carbohydrates, how the carbs digest in our body. So during the digestions, digestible carbohydrates are broken down into the simple sugars. Digestion of starch start with amylase in the saliva and continue in the small intestines by other enzymes. Sucrose and lactose are hydrolyzed by the respective intestine enzymes, and simple sugars are then absorbed through the intestine's wall and the transport in the bloodstreams of to tissue for consumptions or storage. Food which rich in simple sugar deliver the glucose to the blood quickly and can be helpful in case of the hypoglycemia, but regular diet of simple sugar produce high spike of glucose and may promote insulin insensitivity of diabetes. So complex carbohydrate take longer to digest and release simple sugar. Eating complex carbohydrates helps dampen the spikes of glucose, blood glucose, and reduce diabetes. So here's the digestion of the carbohydrates from starting from the mouth. The enzyme salivary amylase begins breaking down starch into the shortage polysaccharides. Towards the mouth, from the mouth toward the when it's come under the stomachs, the salivary amylase is inactivated and no further carbohydrate digestion occurs. And in the small intestine, major of the starch digestion and breakdown of disaccharides occur here. The enzyme pancreatic amylase break down into the starch into monosaccharide and oligosaccharides. Moving toward the large intestines, fibers and other indigestible carbohydrates are partially broken down by the bacteria to form short chain fatty acids and gas, and the remaining fiber is excreted in the feces. So here is the carbohydrate metabolisms. I will explain in detail so all you can understand. This is the glucose. Glucose is the central to the cellular energy productions. Cell breakdowns the glucose when the energy reserves are low. Glucose that is not immediately used is stored as a glycogen in the liver and muscles. So glycogen is converted back to the glucose when the glucose is short supply. So energy productions from the glucose start with glycolysis, which break glucose into two molecules of pyruvates, releasing a small amount of energy. So glycolysis involves multiple reactions. Your glycolysis involves a multiple reactions, and it is tightly regulated by feedback mechanisms. In the absence of oxygens, such as in the muscles during exercise, pyruvate is converted into the lactate. And this anaerobic condition pathway produce no additional energy, but it regenerate NAD plus, which is required for the glycolysis to continue. When oxygen is present, pyruvate is further degraded from acetyl-CoA to carbon dioxide by the citric acid cycles and following electron transport systems. When present in excess, the acetyl-CoA is converted into the fatty acids. Reversely, fatty acids can break down to generate the acetyl-CoA during glucose starvations. When blood sugar level is low, the glycogen is depleted in new glucose can be synthesized from lactate, pyruvates, and some amino acids. This process is called glyconeogenesis. Metabolisms of other simple sugar coverage with a glycolytic pathway at a different points. For example, fructose feed into a pathway at the level of 3 carbon intermediates and thus bypass several regulatory steps. Fructose entrance to the glycolysis is therefore unregulated, unlike glucose. This means productions of the acetyl-CoA from fructose is subsequent conversions to fat and can occur unchecked without regulations by insulin. So here is the overview of carbohydrate metabolisms. So as we know, glucose from the diet can be metabolized via glycolysis or glucogenesis. Resulting metabolic product can return to the glucose via gluconeogenesis or glucogenolysis respectively, or further along carbohydrate metabolisms to the citric acid cycles. Alternatively, glucose product can be turned off fat or amino acid metabolism as indicated. The breakdown, catabolisms and the anabolisms of the carbohydrate molecules represent in the primary means for the human's body to store the utilized energy to provide the building blocks of the molecules such as nucleotides. The enzymes reactions from the metabolic pathway for monosaccharides carbohydrates include glycolysis, citric acid cycles, and oxidative phosphorylations are the main means produce the energy molecule adenosine triphosphates, that is ATP. So glucogeneogenesis and the pentose phosphate pathways represent two anabolic pathways to produce the new carbohydrates molecules. Glycogens is its own metabolic pathway to lengthening and shortening or adding the branch points into the carbohydrate chain. Not surprisingly, all these process are highly regulated at multiple points, allow the humans to efficiently utilize these important biomolecules. Finally, many modified carbohydrates are part variety surface of cytosolic signaling molecules include glycoproteins and glycosaminoglycans, that is GAGs. These important carbohydrate molecules and the control points in the carbohydrates and glycoproteins metabolisms, therefore present clinicians with opportunities to modify this reaction to improve the health or to fight disease. This is the structure of this is the cycle citric acids. Here the diet convert into the glucose. Energy expenditure started from here in first phase, and in the middle it split the phase, and energy expenditure started from here, pyruvates, as I earlier explained. So moving toward the metabolic pathway. This is the role of pathway. We will discuss in further slides. Carbohydrate digestions, which occurs in the intestines, fructose metabolisms, which occurs in the livers, galactose metabolisms in the livers, glucose oxidations, via glucolysis in the cytoplasms, oxidative decarboxylations reactions in the mitochondria, citric acid cycles in the mitochondria, and the electrons transport change, that is ETC, in the inner mitochondria membranes. So glycogenesis in the liver and skeletal muscles occurs, and glycogenolysis occurs in the liver, skeletal muscles, and kidney. Pentose phosphate pathway in the liver, adipose tissue, adrenal cortex, testes, milk gland, phagocyte cells, and even red blood cells. Gluconeogenesis in the liver, kidney, brain, testes, and erythrocytes. Here, as I earlier explained, main pathway of carbohydrate metabolism. I already explained the carbohydrate which is converted into the glucose, and glucose is the central to the cellular energy of productions. Cell breaks down the glucose when the energy reserves are low, and glucose is not the immediate used in the store in the glycogens in the liver and muscles, and glycogen is converted back to the glucose when it is in the short supply. Energy productions from the glucose start from the glycolysis, which break down into the two molecules of pyruvates, releasing in the small amount of energy. On further slides, we will review the main parts of metabolisms, metabolic pathway review in short detail. Carbohydrate digestions, as we all learn about the carbohydrate digestions, how it's digested. So dietary carbohydrates of the greatest importance are composed to hexose such as sucrose, lactose, galactose, and maltose, and also pentose such as xylose and arabinose. Food digestion starts in the mouth through the secretion of the salivary alpha amylase or that hydrolyzed alpha 1,4 linkage of starch and converted it into maltose. So fructose metabolisms. Glucose is the main source of energy in cells. However, with the high consumptions of sucrose composed of glucose and fructose, cells used fructose as well in the muscles, adipose tissues, and kidney, which contain hexokinase fructose, get phosphorylated to become fructose 6-phosphate to be directly used in the glycolysis pathway. However, in the liver, which contain glucokinase, fructose must first be converted to the glucose to consumptions of the glycolysis pathway. Galactose metabolisms, we will see what is galactose metabolisms. Galactose metabolism enter the body. Galactose enter the body following consumptions of milk, which we consume the milk. The sugar or lactose is composed of the galactose and glucose. The lactose is converted to its constituents with lactase activity in the brush border of small intestines. So galactose enter the bloodstreams following the absorptions of enterocytes and enter the liver through the portal vein to be metabolized and convert to glucose for consumption as energy. Glycolysis. What is the glycolysis? Glycolysis, as we see, is defined as a sequence of the reactions converting glucose to pyruvates and lactate with the production of ATP. Nearly all organizations that break down glucose utilize glycolysis. Glucose regulations and products used is the primary categories in which this pathway differs between organizations. In some tissue and organisms, glycolysis is the sole method of energy productions. This pathway is common to both anaerobic and aerobic respirations. Glycolysis consists of 10 steps split into 2 phases. During first phases is required the breakdown to ATP molecules. During the second phase, chemical reactions from the intermediates, it transfers into ATP and NADH. NADH, this is nicotinamides, adenines, dinucleotide phosphates. So the breakdown of one molecule glucose results 2 molecules of pyruvates, which can further oxidize to access more energy in later process. Glycolysis can be regulated at different steps of the process through feedback regulations. As I explained earlier also, there is a different step to process to it needs the mechanism to feed back the regulations. The step that is regulate mostly in third step. This regulation is to ensure that the body is not overproducing pyruvates molecules. The regulations allow for the storage to glucose molecules into the fatty acids. There are various enzymes that are used throughout the glycolysis. The enzymes that is upregulate, downregulate, and feedback regulate in the process. So glyconeogenesis. Glycogenesis is synthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrates compounds. It is known as glyconeogenesis. Okay, so it is a ubiquitous process present in plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, and other microorganisms. As we look in the vertebrates, glyconeogenesis occurs mainly in livers and the lesser extent in the cortex of the kidney. One or two primary mechanisms in other being degradations of the glycogens used by the humans and any other animals to maintain the blood glucose levels, avoid low level hypoglycemia. In ruminant, because dietary carbohydrate tend to metabolize by the rumen organism, glyconeogenesis occurs regardless of fasting, low carbohydrate diets, etc. In many other animals, the process occurs during period of fasting, starvations, low carbohydrate diets, or intense exercise. In human, substrate for the glycogenesis comes from non-carbohydrates source that can be converted to pyruvates or intermediate of glycolysis. For the breakdown of proteins, these substrates includes glycogenic amino acids and breakdown of lipid such as triglycerides. They include glycerols or chain fatty acids, although not even chain fatty acids, and from other parts metabolism they include lactate from chorecycles. Chorecycles means it's involving the synthesis in glucose in liver from the skeletal and muscles lactate and reuse the glucose thus synthesized by the muscles for energy purpose is known as chorecycles. So under conditions for prolonged fasting, acetone derived from ketones bodies and can also serve as a substrate providing a pathway from fatty acids to glucose. Although the gluconeogenesis occurs in the liver and relative contributions of the gluconeogenesis by the kidney is increased in the diabetic and prolonged fastings. So next point, the gluconeogenesis pathway is highly endogenic. Endogenic means that one required free energy to proceed until it couple to hydrolysis to ATP or GTP, effectively making the process energenic. For example, the pathway leading from the pyruvates to glucose 6-phosphate requires 4 molecules of ATP and 2 molecules of GTP to proceed spontaneously. These ATP are supplied from fatty acids, catabolized or beta oxidations. Glycogenolysis. So what is glycogenolysis? Yes, synthesis of glycogens from the glucose take place in cytosols, requires UTP and ATP beside glucose, and it is occurs in the liver, muscles and the kidney. This process occurs to provide glucose when necessary. The single glucose molecules is cleaved from the branch of the glycogens and it transforms into the glucose 1-phosphate. During the process, these molecules can be converted to glucose 6-phosphates, an intermediate glycolysis pathway. Glucose 6-phosphates can then progress through glycolysis, and glycolysis only require the input to 1 molecules of ATP when the glucose originate in glycogens. Alternatively, glucose 6-phosphates can be converted back to glucose in the liver and kidney, allowing it to raise blood glucose level if necessary. So glycogen in the liver stimulates glycogenolysis when the blood glucose is lower, known as hypoglycemia. So the glycogens in the liver can function as a backup source of glucose between meal time. Liver glycogens mainly serve in the central nervous systems. Adrenalines stimulate the breakdowns of glycogens in the skeletal muscles during exercise. In the muscles, glycogens ensure a rapidly accessible energy source of the movement. So glycogenesis. What is the glycogenesis? Sorry. Glycogenesis refers to the process of the synthesized glycogen in humans. Glucose can converted into glycogens. Why this process? Glycogen is the high branch chain and it is a consisting core protein glycogenin surrounded by the branch of glucose units linked together. The branching glycogens increase its solubility and allow the higher number of glucose molecule to access the breakdown at the same time. So glycogenesis occur primarily in the liver, skeletal, muscles and kidney as well. The glycogenesis pathway consume energy with most synthetic pathway because ATP and UTP are consumed for most each molecules of glucose introduced. And moving toward the pentose phosphate pathway. So it is the fundamental components of cellular metabolism, which is alternative method of oxidizing glucose. It occurs in liver, adipose tissue, adrenal cortex, testis, mammary glands, phagocytes, and even red blood cells. It's produce products that are used in the cell process while reducing NADP to NADPH. This pathway is regulated through changes in the activity of glucose phosphate dehydrogenase. So moving toward functions of carbohydrates. As we discussed all about the carbohydrate metabolisms, moving towards the functions of the carbohydrates. What is the role? Body function primarily in the form of glucose. although new have a structural roles. So as we know, carbohydrate is a major source of energy, and each gram yield approximately 4 kcal regardless of the source. So glucose is indispensable for maintaining the functional integrity of the nerves tissue and under normal circumstances. It's the sole source of energy for the brain. So the presence of the carbohydrate, it is necessary for normal fat metabolisms. In the absence of the sufficient carbohydrate, the large amount of fat are used for energy. Then the body is equipped to handle, and oxidation is incomplete. The resultant, the accumulations of acidic intermediate may lead to acidosis, eventually to sodium imbalance and dehydrations. So lactose remains in the intestine longer than other saccharides, thus encourage the growth of the beneficials, resulting in the laxative actions. One of the functions of this bacteria is believed to be a synthesis of certain vitamin. This is such as known as vitamin K in the large intestines. So glucuronic acids. Glucuronic acids, a metabolite of glucose, functions in the liver to combine the chemical and the bacterial toxin as well as with some normal metabolites to convert them in the form in which they may be excreted. So carbohydrates and derivations serve as precursors to compounds such as nucleic acids, connective tissue matrix, galactosidase of nerve tissue. Moving toward the key points. As I here included some key points. As we know, the carbohydrates has 1 gram of carbohydrate provides 4 kcal energy, regardless of whether it is eaten in the form of poly, di, or monosaccharides. Although carbohydrate can replace as a source of energy by fat or proteins, as a series of undesirable symptoms appears when the diet consistently provides less than 50 of carbohydrate per day. These symptoms are similarly to those that develop in starvations. There is unexplained loss of large amount of sodiums and water, which explain the rapid loss of body weight found in people eating a carbohydrate-free diet. The loss of sodium is followed by the loss of potassiums, which usually lead weakness. At the same time, unless the dietary proteins intake are very high, the protein of the body begins to break down. Muscles are largely composed of protein, which leads to muscle waste, further weakness, further weight loss. Even more seriously, when carbohydrate is absent, the use of fat to provide energy become hindered in final series of chemical step normally involved in oxidation known as ketones. As the ketones build up, they begin to found abnormal component of blood and urine. Also because they change the hydrogen ion balance of tissue, the ketones begins to interfere the normal functionings of the various body process, which okay, so people reacting this stage are said to be suffering from ketosis, which usually produces fatigue, dehydrations, loss of stamina, and all these undesirable effects of carbohydrate-free diets are soon corrected by the returns of carbohydrate to diet. A clear indications that carbohydrate really is dietary essentials. Intake of less than 50 grams of carbohydrate per day are associated with adverse health effect. All these informations help us appreciate that low carbs diet, less than 50 grams each day, or starvation diet are dangerous and unsuccessful way to try to lose weight. So fortunately, because low carbs diet are unpalatable, people who try them usually soon give up and regain their lost water and weight. As here if we eat fiber and bran, fill you up before you get too many calories. Also, they slow the rate of absorptions from your guts into your blood, so your blood sugar rise slowly and not too high. When the fibers and bran are removed from the food, it get rapidly absorbs and causing your blood sugar to spike high levels, which turn causes your pancreas to secrete insulin to bring your blood sugar back up. So here I'm throwing some points. I know I'm saying about the carbohydrates relating. So for the diabetic clients or patients, there is
Shama, just hold on a second.
Yeah.
Your slides are not moving.
No, sir. Actually, this is last slides. I'm just throwing some lights about the carbohydrate and diabetes.
Okay, got it. Go ahead.
Okay. Actually, they will think the if we are intaking the carbohydrates, their blood glucose level will spike. So there is a myth and fears. I want to clear about it. So many of us rely on carbohydrate as a main source of energy. Carbohydrates contain foods that provide important nutrients for good health. All the carbohydrates we drink and eat from broken down into the glucose, as we all know. So eating some carbohydrates containing food on their diet, the actual amount that you need to eat will depend on your age, activity levels, and the goals you're trying to reach. For example, one person is trying to lose weight and manage their blood sugar glucose levels, or glucose levels and restricted on their carbs intake, while the another person is very happy to with their weight and they decided to eat more healthy carbs. The total amount of carbohydrates eaten will have the biggest effect on your glucose level after eating. So it is important to know how much you are eating. However, not everyone with diabetic need to restrict their carbs intake. So here's I am as a holistic nutrition coach. I'm adding a one tool here. Be grateful and mindful while eating, while doing gratitude. Happy hormones released by cells, which are serotonin, dopamine, DMN, oxidations, while sad hormones not getting released. All these cells. Here you can see the two bananas. This banana is very happy and this banana is very sad. So it is so whom they are able to digest more. Obviously happy ones, because they are releasing the cells serotonins, dopamines, DMP, DMT oxidations. And while in other hand, sad banana, their hormones also is being sad and it is not able to release all these hormones through the cells. So the key is making small changes to eat the way our ancestor and elder used to eat. So basic, back to basic, keep it simple and sustainable. Kiss. Thank you for being me, starting to end. So this is the last slides. Thank you, sir. Hello?
Thank you, Shema.
Yeah.
Shema, you can stop the screen share.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you, Shema. We forget some fundamental biochemistry also. You brush up our knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any questions from students? Mahalakshmi is saying, awesome, Shema.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Yukta is saying, very informative, madam. Please, if you have any queries about the carbohydrate, means you can ask. about the metabolism. I think no doubts because you are explained very well, very clear presentation, Shema.
Thank you. Thank you.
Viva is saying it was awesome. So many doubts got cleared. Very informative. Sir?
Yeah, I'll give another 5 minutes for students to ask the questions. If they're not asking questions, I'm going to ask them the questions. Okay, better
Okay, sir.
they ask the questions. Okay. In another 5 minutes, I'll step down.
Any doubts regarding to pathways or maybe classification? All of you know that. All
Hi,
of you
Padma.
clear about. Hi, Tanya.
Yeah, no, I have no queries, but yeah, Shama has done, I mean, wonderfully. I mean, such a dreaded and extensive presentation on carbohydrate metabolism. I mean, got all my college days revived. So it was a revision, very well done. And to cover everything in such a small amount of time with so much of clarity, it's really wonderful. Great, Shama. Thanks for bringing this to us. And thanks, Padma.
Thank you, Dania, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, Danya. All of you clear about glycolysis, gluconeogenesis? Navata is saying I have really recollected well. Thank you, dear. Great presentation, Shema.
Yeah.
So how many actual students are there apart from senior coaches? I see Amtul, Ishrat, Jennifer, Nausheen, Sadia, Sidra, Vibha. Okay, one question from one glucose molecule. How many ATPs are produced net? There is total number of, not you, Shama. Okay.
Shall I?
No,
Sir, this question
not you.
for students
Yeah,
or coaches?
Students. Someone must answer. So you have one glucose molecule which gets cleaved into two pyruvate, and each pyruvate enters into the citric acid cycle, and finally you get ATP, right? That means second pyruvate also can enter into the citric acid cycle, and so from one glucose molecule, total how many ATP are produced net? I'm not asking total, net. Anyone?
6 ATPs.
Who is this?
38.
Who is 38? Tell your
Me,
name, I'm
sir,
on
Navata.
mobile. You are
Navata,
not a
sir.
student, Navata. And
Fatma
38 is
says,
wrong.
But you asked everyone. Okay, sir, it's fine.
38 is not right because I asked net. I know you will come up with 38, but I asked net. That means like you consume certain ATPs to get into this carbohydrate metabolism also.
Okay.
Sir, it's 8 ATPs.
Consume
The net ATP synthesis in the anaerobic condition, I think it's 8.
Oh boy, but I didn't ask whether it is aerobic or anaerobic. I'm just asking regular aerobic respiration of
Sir,
glucose.
6.
I said 38 is correct, but not totally correct. It should give you an idea. So what happens is from glucose to glucose 6 phosphate. Okay, it uses two ATP molecules. Okay, and when I said ATP, it is not just ATP that I am talking about. So the NADPH, it gives 3 ATP molecule because NADPH directly cannot be used as an energy source. It is always ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Okay, and second thing, pentose phosphate. Okay, pentose pathway. What is the purpose of pentose pathway and how it is useful? How you can ensure that your pentose pathway is good? Where do they go? Pentose sugars, where do they go? Anyone?
I know they protect RBCs.
Pentose RBC.
The purpose to protect RBCs. I remember reading it, sir.
Okay. Give me a name of a pentose.
Nucleus. Something.
Glucose is a hexose, right?
Yes, sir.
That means 6 carbon. Pentose means 5 carbon.
5 carbon.
So 5 carbon sugars are called pentoses. Example of a pentose sugar?
Ribose.
Ribose.
Yeah. So where do you see ribose?
RNA.
DNA. RNA. Sorry, sir.
Nucleic acid.
Nucleic acid.
Exactly. So carbohydrates are responsible for synthesis of
Nucleic acids.
Nucleic.
nucleic acid. Okay. Nucleic acids are nucleotides. There is a difference between nucleotide and nucleoside. Anyone?
Nitrogen base is there, sir, in nucleotides.
Mhm. Don't expect an answer from me. Okay. If I am asking those questions, note them down and try to explore. See, when you look for the answer, you remember it more clearly. Okay. You retain that information compared to someone giving you an answer because you'll forget it. Note down all these questions. And lastly, how much of glucose, last question, how much of glucose is present in human body? Circulating glucose. How much of glucose is present in human blood? Now you can take paper and pen and start. In a normal healthy individual, how much of glucose is present? Total amount of glucose that is present in human body, adult human body.
Yes, sir, that is average blood
5
glucose, na?
liter in.
No, not average.
5
I'm
liter
asking
into
about the
1
total.
ml glucose.
Yeah, you can do the calculation. I mean, someone got it right. Yeah, do the calculation and let me know. Do it now, all of you.
This one, huh?
How long will it take to calculate the glucose in the blood? Yeah, who would like to answer this? What is the normal glucose range per deciliter?
80 to 120 mg.
Who is this?
Praveen.
Yeah, 80 to 120 mg. Let's assume that 100 is average. Okay, 100 milligram per deciliter. Deciliter means 100 ml, right? Hello?
Yes, sir, 100 ml.
Yes, sir.
Deciliter is 100 ml.
Yes.
That means if there is 100 milligrams of glucose in 100 ml of blood, so in 1 liter, how many milligrams? 100 into 10. Okay,
Yes, sir.
1000 milligrams. That is 1 gram per liter.
Yeah.
And what is the total volume of blood in human body?
Around 7 liter.
5 to 5.5 liters.
Yeah.
Okay.
5
So
to 7.
5 liters means 5 liters into 1 gram.
5 grams.
So
5 grams.
the total amount of sugar in human body at any point of the time is how many grams?
5 to 7 gram.
5
to 7 grams.
5
Yeah.
grams.
That's it. Now, how much of carbohydrate you are supposed to take? According to Shama?
It's
50 grams. 50 grams.
Yeah. What is happening to 45 grams then?
Muscle glycogen.
Yeah. Once your muscle glycogen is full,
Then raise in blood sugar.
Liver glycogen.
muscle and liver are full. What happened to excess glucose then?
Lipogenesis.
Rise in blood sugar level.
Adipose
The
tissue.
Adipose
lipogenesis.
tissue storage.
Lipogenesis. So only if the person is sedentary.
Sedentary.
Okay. In carbohydrate metabolism, glucose is not only the energy source. The reason why I asked about pentose. Okay. And glucuronic acid, that is a very important compound which helps in liver detoxification, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Glucuronic acid, liver metabolism. Remember your biochemistry? I mean, really, Shama, I got really totally charged up listening to your presentation. It's wonderful. It's like completing the entire carbohydrate metabolism chapter in a go.
Thank you so much for your
All the memories from 96 are coming back. It's almost like 26 years since I studied that AVS Ramarao biochemistry.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. So this glucose is going into the pentose phosphate pathway and glycoproteins. Okay. Sorry. Proteoglycans. Okay. And which form the cellular structure that give integrity to the cell cytosol. It is liquid, right? Actually, cytoplasm. Cytosol is more like what do you say? Almost like liquid, gel type.
Yes,
so, but to give that cell the texture, you need this cytoskeleton that is formed by these proteoglycans and glycoproteins. Okay. So all these things carbohydrate does. And when we say 50 grams of carbohydrate, And 50 grams of carbohydrate, there can be fiber also that therein, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this fiber, if you included, she mentioned that in the last point, where it is responsible in the large intestine. It gets fermented, this fiber and all, the bran and all this stuff. It gets fermented. It produces gas if there are unhealthy bacteria in our gut. Okay. And also it produces certain vitamins and minerals, releases from this fiber. So if you look at the structure of glycogen, the core is glycogenin. It is a protein. Around that, the glucose molecules get attached.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you're a student to write the examination, try to look at the applied aspect of it. So just by hearting the citric acid cycle or the pentose phosphate pathway or Cori cycle, yeah, I mean, like if you don't understand the context, the functional aspect of biochemistry, it becomes boring. Okay. But if you look at how the cell is like putting it into different things, see, the cell knows. We are not telling the cell, okay, now I am running, so produce lactate. Okay. We are not telling it, but the cell knows, right? Right. So, and if we give this fiber rich food, carbohydrate, add that thing, so it keeps the healthy bacteria more in number, so that we don't suffer with any kind of vitamins and mineral deficiency. See, once you complete carbohydrate, protein, and lipid metabolism, there is something known as intermediary metabolism. How these metabolisms actually interact with each other's metabolism. Okay. And when you study exclusively carbohydrate metabolism and not combining them with protein and lipid metabolisms, okay, you will not get the complete picture. Okay. And always try to look into the functional aspect when it comes to biochemistry. Okay. Why this is happening? If you ask these questions, why, how, when and where, all these things, I mean, like, it's really fascinating. You will fall in love with biochemistry. And I feel like doing a class again on carbohydrate metabolism after Shama's presentation. Very well done, Shama.
Thank you, sir. Such a
And how many of you actually went back to your, what is it, something like that, listening to this presentation? I just reached home. I am still need to go to upstairs. How many of you actually went back to the class? I went back to 1996, honestly. I thought of like opening my biochemistry textbook right now. It is really good.
Myself, sir, Navata.
Yeah. It's really good to brush up all our knowledge. And from time to time, I think we need to take up this clinical nutrition as well. Okay, it's good.
So thank you, sir, because I am getting clinical nutrition over here.
Really nice, really nice. So is Neelam there?
Yes,
I don't think
yes,
she's.
sir. Yeah, there, sir.
Neelam is there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
So
Neelam.
this is going to be on YouTube always, na? So again,
Yeah.
I'll go to it and again study this carbohydrate metabolism because it is too fast for me.
Yeah, it is. But the way Neelam structured protein metabolism, you will still fall in love with biochemistry once again. Okay, and wait for that. And it is going to like mix so many things. Okay, it is not like pure science, but yeah, the stakes are high, Neelam.
Sir, I am scared now.
Wow, really interesting to know. Really captivating.
I am really scared now.
Okay, good. I mean, because you divided it into different parts, right? So
Yes,
it's going to be a different kind of experience.
Yes.
Seriously, because right now we have more students than senior coaches, so it will help them as well.
Absolutely.
Got it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I try to do few classes on this carbohydrate metabolism as well, small classes, 15-20 minutes classes to explain the concepts so that it's there, it remains in our mind, and we can recollect it easily. Okay, the techniques that I use to remember things, that also I'll do. Okay, very well done. Keep up the good work, and yeah, we'll continue to have apart from Monday lives, we continue to have this one session weekly exclusively on this microbiology, biochemistry, anatomy, physiology, and all these things.
Done, sir. Done, sir.
Okay,
Done,
sir.
sir. That will be really great for at least me and Siley, for sure.
Thank you, sir, for me. Thank you so much.
Siley, I am with you.
Siley is like asking, and it is like godsend. Look at your attraction, Siley. It's all happening because of your attraction.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I really attract the clinical biochemistry.
Even sir, not only for biologists, it is helps us for everyone, sir. Actually.
Yeah, Siley has been asking, sir, why don't you take classes on clinical biochemistry and this thing, and she keeps on asking me about this, and now you have the answer.
Otherwise,
and
I
it is
will
interesting.
some other class. I always tell, can I attend this class? Can I attend this class? Oh no, wait, I am going to take it.
Okay.
I was planning for that pathophysiology with Dr. PK, no? Now we can plan up a session here.
Yeah. And the PK, he'll explain you like with wonderful stories. Seriously, it is high time that I'll post his number in the group, and everyone starts sending him messages. He will. I mean, like, if you want to learn pathology, and he is the guy, go-to guy. Okay. He used to tell us Ramayana Mahabharata to explain pathology. And he will say, yeah, he suddenly gives characters to different people, and this T cell is like Hanuman, and this is like Sugriva, and so he will create something, some kind of stories. Okay, good, well done, Shama. Good job.
So much, sir. I would like to thank to Padma ma'am, senior coaches, and all my friends who encourage me and motivate for this. And sir, thank you so much for giving me such opportunities. Thank you.
Good. Okay then. Chalo. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Good
Okay.
night. Bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.
Danya, you need to go to YouTube again.
Okay. Okay, sir.
And,
I'll do that.
And then on top right, you see that same
End
button,
stream.
go live button, right? End stream.
Yeah, end stream. There is an end stream
End stream.
button.
Yeah. Okay, done.
Shama, you remember our chemistry days, sir, Shalu here. So you told that